Good day, everyone. We are the reporters and we are here to discuss Augustine's answers to the problem of evil and Aquinas' natural law.
Who is Augustine? Augustine of Hippo, or also known as Aurelius Augustinus Hipponensis, was a bishop of Hippo from 396 to 430. He was born on November 13, 354 in Tagaste Numida and died on August 28, 430. He was one of the Latin fathers of the Church and perhaps the most important Christian thinker after St. Paul. Augustine created a comprehensive and long-lasting theological framework by adapting classical principles to Christian teaching. His numerous written works molded biblical exegesis and helped lay the framework for much of medieval and modern Christian theology, the most noteworthy of which are Confessions. He is formally recognized as a doctor of the Church in Roman Catholicism. Augustine is notable for what he accomplished and exceptional for what he wrote. He would still have been a force to be reckoned with if none of his written works had survived. But his status would have been closer to that of some of his contemporaries. However, his works amount to more than 5 million words, almost all of which demonstrated the vigor and sharpness of his mind, some of which had an uncommon ability to capture and hold the attention of readers in both his days and ours. Only the Bible, not his particular doctrinal approach, had a great impact on Latin Christianity. His work is still relevant now, in part because he was a member of a religious organization that dominated the West at that time and continues to do so today. Augustine represents the most influential interrogation of the ancient Platonic tradition with Christian concepts that the Latin Christian world. Augustine had much more limited and diluted understanding of the Platonic past than many of his Greek-speaking contemporaries, but his writings were so widely read and imitated throughout Latin Christendom. Defined the terms for much later tradition and argument because of his unique combination of Christian, Roman, and Platonic traditions. In certain ways, both modern Roman Catholic and Protestant Christianity owe a great deal to Augustine, but each community has been ashamed to admit it in the face of irreconcilable components in his philosophy. Augustine, for example, has been hailed as a champion of human liberty as well as an articulate defender of divine destiny. His views on sexuality were humanitarian in design but tyrannical in reality. One of his noble works is the Confessions of St. Augustine. It is a spiritual self-examination written around 400 CE. Augustine's restless youth is chronicled in this book. It is his difficult spiritual journey which culminated 12 years before the book's publication in the safe haven of Roman Catholic Church. The work is about an investigation of an individual's intellectual and emotional evolution than an autobiography. Augustine's Confession broke new ground as literature, and the autobiography genre owes many of its qualities to him. The term confession was coined by Augustine to describe religiously sanctioned discourse such as the praise of God, self-blame, and faith confession. The book is deeply complex reflection on the course and meaning of one's own life by a middle-aged man. The book highlights the difference between his previous voyage and his current position of authority as bishop. The progression is from the beginning of a man's life to the beginning of a human society. Between those two moments, most readers' attention is drawn to the story of sin and redemption. The ethics of St. Augustine is known to be eudaimonistic, which means that it is about the attainment of happiness. Happiness, wisdom, and reason. Augustine considered ethics as a study for the supreme good, giving considerations to the happiness of everyone. God and the order of things. Since God is the absolute and eternal being, and nothing or no one is better or higher than Him, God therefore is the highest good in this world. Love of God and moral living. Augustine believes that love is the center of our moral life. However, we should be cautious on what we love, because we may also love the things that we think are good but actually leads us to evil. Virtue, double love, and charity. He defines virtue as a perfect love of God. Virtue is the beauty of true love ordered toward, because to live virtuously is to love doing the right things. He depicts the prime virtue of love by the double love command taught in the Bible. Jesus told us to love not only God but also our neighbor as well. Sin and moral evil. Augustine tells us that committing a sin with full responsibility is the weakness of will. When the action is carried out, what is sinful is not the action itself or its conscience, but the intention of the person. The fall and God's grace. He claims that the disobedience of Adam and Eve in the creation are evil acts of free will. This fallen nature is a state from which people cannot attain genuine happiness. However, Augustine believes that sin can be avoided if our corrupted nature be healed by God's grace. Without God's gracious intervention, it is impossible for us to become righteous.
Many people believe in God and understand God to be omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent. But the world contains quite a lot of evil or badness, intense suffering, premature death, and moral wickedness. This inspires some questions of why would God permit such evil? Is there a good reason why, or does it occur in part because there is no God to prevent it? Asking these questions involves engaging with the problem of evil. The problem of evil, also known as the problem of suffering, is an argument against the existence of God. It claims that the existence of evil and suffering such as pains, distress, and death is incompatible with the existence of the classical theist God who is meant to be all-loving and all-powerful. As we know, evil comes in many forms, and likewise, for philosophers possessed many problems, especially to the existence of God. First, there is what known as the logical problem of evil. According to this problem, it is logically impossible for God and evil to coexist. If God exists, then evil cannot exist. If evil exists, then God cannot exist. So since evil exists, it follows that God does not exist. Theists and atheists both agree that evil exists in this way, but they disagree about the next part. Many theists believe in an omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent God, but atheists argue that this creates a contradiction, a set of beliefs that can't all be true at the same time. If one is true, another must be false. But because evil is bad, whether it's stub toes or genocide or paper cuts or epidemics, so if there's really an all-knowing God out there, He knows about all the evil. He might even know about it before it happens. If He's all-powerful, He could stop it. And if He's all good, then He would want to stop it. And yet, He doesn't. The evil continues. Philosophically, rational people shouldn't hold inconsistent beliefs. So, atheists argue that you're going to give something up. And the thing to give up is God. Some theists, however, take a different route. They chose to give up one or more divine attributes. They argue that maybe God isn't powerful enough to stop evil, or maybe He's not knowledgeable enough to know about it, or maybe He's not even good enough to care about stopping it. That might sound weird to some of you, but if you ever heard someone say that God is envious or petty or jealous, That's basically what they're doing. They are acknowledging the possibility that God is not actually good. Many theists are committed to God's omni-attribute and are thus stuck with a problem. They have to resolve the logical problem of evil and find some way to explain why God would allow evil in the world. And if you can do that, then you are presenting what is known as theodicy. The word theodicy is a combination of two Greek terms and simply means to justify God. In other words, it's an attempt to explain how the existence of evil and suffering is compatible with the classical theist view of God as all good and all powerful. Augustinian theodicy. It is named after the 4th century Christian theologian and philosopher Saint Augustine of Hippo. He begins his theodicy with the concept that God is perfect, that the world he has created is one that reflects perfection. He claimed that all evil is either sin or the punishment for sin. Natural or moral evil are therefore consequences of this disharmony within the creation created by the false. The next is the most popular theodicy. It is called the free will defense. These arguments hold that God maximized the goodness in the world by creating free beings. And being free means that we have the choice to do evil things, a choice that some of us exercise. This theodicy says that God doesn't create evil, but evil can't be avoided without depriving us from our freedom. And the world without freedom would be worst place overall. This explanation preserves God's goodness because He created the best possible world, and also preserves His omnipotence and omniscience because although He does know about evil and could stop it, He has a good reason not to, and that is to ensure our freedom. The problem is the free will defense only addresses what is known as moral evil, or the evil committed on purpose. Now, we're certainly responsible for a lot of bad stuff, but you can't blame us for everything. We can't be held responsible for the fact that the plates of Earth sometimes shift, causing destructive earthquake, or that the storm might knock a tree over that falls onto someone's house. This type of evil, the stuff we're not responsible for, is called natural evil. And unfortunately, the free will defense can't resolve natural evil. There's also another way. 20th century English philosopher of religion John Hick offered what's known as the soul-making theodicy. Unlike the traditional view that God created a perfect world, which we wind through our own poor choices, Hick argued that God deliberately creates us unfinished, and our earthly lives are designed to toughen us up, in a sense kinda like boot camp. The harshness of life, Hicks said, gives us a robust texture and character that wouldn't be possible without an imperfect world. He said that we're not just God's little pets, and He's not our benevolent owner, whose sole job is to keep us in a safe, comfortable environment. Instead, He wants to build us, to train us into a particular kind of being. So, we need an environment that's suited to the sort of growth that He wants, the sort that worlds makes possible. A lot of people find this and other theodicies to be pretty compelling. However, the problem of evil actually goes a step deeper. What we've been talking about so far is the logical problem of evil. This problem can be resolved if we can explain why there is evil. But there is also known as evidential problem of evil. This problem points out that we might be able to explain why evil exists, but we still can't explain why there is so much evil in the world. In that case, why can't we understand the contrast through some sort of low-level evil, like paper cuts and head colds and having to work straight through our lunch hour every now and then? I mean slow or painful deaths from cancer and city-destroying hurricanes. They don't really add anything valuable to our understanding of goodness. If God were truly good and if a negative contrast were really needed in order for us to understand the goodness of the world, then why wouldn't He just give us the very minimum dosage of necessary evil to achieve that goal? A counter-argument might suggest that there is always a good that corresponds to an evil. But empirically, such goodness is really hard to find. You can't really argue that whatever doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Because sometimes evil does kill us, a lot of us. And sometimes it kills us before we have a chance to grow and learn for the suffering we've enjoyed. If each particular evil is even a little bit of evidence against God's existence, the billion and billion of them in history might really pile up. For many people, the problem of evil is not merely an abstract puzzle, for it challenges their most profound beliefs about what God is like and whether God even exists.